Hello and welcome. As a bit of a change for this show only, and as a little bit of a diversion from railway modelling, I'm going to take you on a tour of where I work. I'm going to show you around the East London Line Signalling Control Centre and New Cross Gate Depot. Now, the East London Line is principally famous for the Thames Tunnel. This was built by Mark Brunel, who was Isambard's father, between 1825 and 1843, and was the first successful tunnel beneath a navigable waterway. It was converted to railway use in 1869, and it was listed Grade 2 star in 1995. It was refurbished by London Underground between 1995 and 1998, not without controversy, but it is still possible to see some of the original features at the Brunel Museum in Rotherhithe. The line was subsequently converted to heavy rail from underground use and was reopened by TfL in 2010. So, with the history lesson out of the way, we shall start with our view out of the signal box windows at New Cross Gate. The line in the immediate foreground is the line to the maintenance shed. The line on the ramp is the Up East London line from New Cross Gate Station. The down line to New Cross Gate Station is beyond the wooden fence. The long grey building is the carriage washer, and the building with the angled roof contains the wheel lathe and heavy cleaning shed. If I turn around from the window, this is the principal signalling workstation. It consists of 6 screens and covers the line from Highbury and Islington to New Cross Gate and Old Kent Road Junction. Our normal service is 16 trains per hour, which is measured in one direction only. The workstation also covers the 2 sets of carriage sidings where most of the units are berthed overnight. 5 screens cover the running lines and the 6th has various alarms on it. It is also possible to alter the configuration of the screens, but you must always have an alarm screen. More about that later. The panel is usually operated by this, the tracker ball. Think of it as a 5-button mouse, which, in effect, is what it is. The blue buttons operate points, and the duplicated set and cancel buttons cater for left and right-handed operators. The orange ball moves a cursor, a set of crosshairs, around the 5 screens with the running lines on. There is also a keyboard, and it is totally possible to operate the signalling in a limited manner using just this. There are 2 methods of using the keyboard, but these would only really be used if the trackable fails. The workstation is actually on its second trackable, which was replaced quite recently. Some of the keyboard functions have red stickers on them because the functions beneath do not work on our particular system. There are also some functions that require both the trackable and the keyboard. Do you see the equal symbol flashing in the corner of the screen? This is called the update confirmation character, and it is how the signaller tells that the screens haven't frozen. The orange rectangles allow the signaller to perform several functions, and you can see that the VW3 indicator is highlighted. This means that the screen is view 3, and there are 8 possible views. You could set 5 of the screens to VW3 if you so desired. The 3 rectangles on the end are interesting. Dual enables the other workstation. Poser and Poser Override enable an alternative proceed on-site signalling mode on certain signals during failure. More about that later. The pink roundels show that the automatic signalling system, called the automatic route facility, is turned on, and the hollow red roundels allow the signaller to change a selection of signals or all signals on the line to red in an emergency. The coloured lollipops are the signals themselves. and where they are positioned on the diagram is where they are on the ground. Signals with a blue A next to them are called controlled signals. A red R means that the signal is automatic or train operated, although by definition we have no automatic signals on the East London line. This is because in the rules, drivers can do things on their own authority at an automatic signal, which wouldn't actually be a particularly good idea on our line, as the signal spacing and the overlaps are much closer than normal. Signals with numbers in blue are fitted with TPWS, either stop or overspeed or both. Signals in grey are not fitted, but buffer stops with an overspeed sensor have a blue bar. Signals that have a grey quarter cheese, as I call it, are fitted for poser working, and Echo Lima 3004 is a fixed red limit of shunt indication. Set routes on the panels show up in white and the trains are red. Train reporting numbers are pink and all our passenger services are Class 9. Train detection is predominantly by axle counter as most of the line is below ground and gets quite damp even in dry weather. As I mentioned earlier, we also control two sets of sidings directly, which is unusual. Train detection here is predominantly by track circuit, and if you don't count the maintenance facilities, we usually berth 23 or 24 units here at night. Moving back to the displays, we can use the cursor on the orange boxes to increase or decrease the amount of information on the screen. SGN displays all the signal numbers, but note that all those in blue are always displayed. PTN displays the point numbers. TCN displays all the track circuit or axle counter section names. AXL enables an axle counter reset, and they produce red hollow circles above the track circuit name or track section name. SSI shows what areas are on what SSI, which is the solid state interlocking, and there are 6 SSI areas. I think we can pretty well agree that the screen is now very cluttered with too much information, so clicking on the relevant boxes again removes the detail. Other orange boxes put electronic reminders on signals, and when you select REM, you get reminder written on the right of the screen. If you leave it long enough, it will time out and disappear, so you don't put it where you didn't intend to. But I will place one on Echo Lima 3037. You can see the turquoise box. This prevents use of that signal. I will try to set a route to Echo Lima 285 and you can see that it doesn't work. There are 2 ways to get it to work. You can remove the reminder by clicking on REM and then the signal and then cancel, or you can use ROV, which is the reminder override, if you don't want to remove the reminder totally. ROV works on a one-shot route setting basis, provided you aren't too quick, as I was on the first attempt, and it keeps the reminder in place. You can see Echo Lima 3037 turns white, and the route to Echo Lima also turns white once all the points are set correctly. If you now press cancel on the entry signal Echo Lima 3037, the route cancels immediately as there is no train present. If there was a train present, the signal will go back to red, but it would flash for anything between 30 seconds and 4 minutes, depending. This is the electronic equivalent of Welling control, to check that you wanted to do what you did. To remove the reminder, move the cursor to the turquoise overlay, select REM and then select cancel. These reminders can also be used on points and prevent them from moving. There are other signal reminders such as ISO, which places a brown reminder on the signal. It works in the same way as the turquoise reminder, except it is an electrical isolation reminder, so you could run non-electric trains. There are other reminders that fit around track sections rather than signals. You can see turquoise and brown around the north end of berth siding 6 on the display. You'll see it on the ground later, but it has no power and can only be used for stabling on-track plant. Other reminders are white for engineering possession reminders, crimson for an aspect restriction after an axle counter reset, or yellow for a SPAD, which is also accompanied by an ear-piercing cry for help. The blocks of grey lettering on the screens allow the signaller to set a route without having to search for the exit signal on an adjacent screen. These can also have turquoise and brown reminders. You will note that there is one on Washer Road North, as we are not allowed to use that particular route. Moving on to other equipment. This is the alarm panel as opposed to the alarm screen. For example, when a train approaches, we get an audible alarm, plus a visual one from this panel, plus an indication on the alarm screen. The row of buttons are the alarms to other signal boxes. Upminster for Highbury to Dalston, and Three Bridges for New Cross Gate to Old Kent and Old Kent Road. These are usually tested daily between 10 and 11. The 6 big red buttons at the top are the absolute last resort. They are the equivalent of pressing a power button on a PC when it is running, except these power off the SSI processors which are in the equipment room downstairs. For example, if that equals sign stops flashing. I'm now going to show you the communication systems that we use, starting with the tunnel telephones. When I first started here, the tunnel sections were fitted with dual wires, as all underground lines used to be fitted. There were also telephones on the platforms underground, and these allowed the drivers to cut traction power and communicate in an emergency. The wires have now gone, but there are still telephones at the stations. We, as signallers, can also cut power by using the cage buttons in the top row of the unit. Next is the telephone concentrator. As well as having outside lines, which are in blue, there are links to virtually all the signals on the line and some points. The significance of the green and red colouring is that the green ones are two-way and the red ones can't be called by the signaller. Some also have a label that says no HS, and this means that we can't station a hand signaller at that particular signal for degraded working. Single line working, for example. There are 6 screens of numbers in total. And lastly, we have GSMR. This is our main means of contacting trains and the drivers to contact us, and it also works in the tunnel sections. This is a very versatile piece of equipment, and we were only the second signalling centre to be equipped in the country. At the touch of a button, I can see all the trains under my control and where they are. It tells me what unit is forming what service and what cab it is being driven from. I can call trains individually or in groups, or I can start an emergency stop request if necessary. Drivers can also do this. I get an alarm if the driver's safety device is activated, and I can broadcast over the train's public address system. It used to have a text function too, but this has long been disabled after a certain amount of abuse. Not by us, I must add. A driver may text waiting at signal, and we can only reply wait, and that is it for the text function. Another useful function is the ability to broadcast recorded messages to trains. These can be activated in several ways. On a timed basis, all trains in a particular area, or on a particular signal berth or berths. This is very useful when you have a train every 3.5 minutes in either direction, and it means you don't have to call each train individually. Of course, all the calls on all of these communication systems are recorded, and part of my job is to ensure that communication standards are being adhered to. Another tool at our disposal is this, which is called Control Center of the Future, or CCF. It indicates how trains are running in a visual display. This particular screen displays the trains between London Bridge and Norwood Junction, and the colour scheme indicates how late or early a particular train is. Green is on time and yellow is 1 to 4 minutes late. I can view other areas. This view covers the approaches to East and West Croydon. The two orange trains are 5 to 9 minutes late. Now we are looking at Victoria to Balham. And now Waterloo to Clapham Junction. You can see a problem developing at a glance, and as everything is recorded, you can do a replay in real time or speed it up. You can also go off area. This is King's Cross. The blue train is early between 5 and 9 minutes, but the red trains are late between 10 and 19 minutes. Later than 20 minutes, the trains turn shocking pink. Further afield, this is Newcastle. A considerable number of other lines are covered, but it tends to be areas with more modern signalling systems. Lines with absolute block are not covered in any particular depth. Even now, the railway does still run on a certain amount of paper. These are some of the forms that a signaller may use in the course of their duties, and once completed, they become legal documents. In normal operation, we are excused booking trains. However, we still have an occurrence book, and this is also a legal document. As you can see, this is the 60th book since Network Rail took over the line in January 2010, and as each book has 50 pages, it means that there are almost 3,000 pages of things that have happened since we took over. Every signal box location normally has something unique about it, and this is catered for in the signal box special instructions. Put simply, these are modifications to the main rulebook to cater for circumstances on any particular line, and every signal box has them to a greater or lesser degree. This is the Bridge Strike Appendix, which lists all bridges on our line and under our control, with protection details and restrictions if we receive a report that the bridge has been hit. We also have a couple of user work crossings in the depot, and we are required to keep a record of movements across them. This is the back road crossing. We also have route lists for when things go wrong, and routes must be set manually. They tell you explicitly how to go from one signal to the next one, if there are points involved. SSI-A has its own folder, as there are more routes in that area than the other 5 areas combined on the rest of the line. Every week we receive a document called the Weekly Operating Notice, or WON. We have engineering work every weekday night on the East London line, and this document, amongst other things, details the arrangements that the signaller needs to agree with the person in charge of the possession, who is called the PICOP. This is what the workstation looks like when all the units have returned to the depot after service. A unit is coming out of the maintenance shed, and the only space available for it is in the wash road. Elsewhere on the line, this is what it looks like when under engineering possession. The track sections are surrounded by white engineering possession reminders. which affect the axle counters. The signals, which are all at red, have yellow SPAD inhibit reminders, because at 3 a.m. the last thing you want is a very loud SPAD alarm going off for an avoidable reason. So, what does an axle counter actually look like? Well, this is what is on the outside of the rail, and this is on the inside of the rail. What it does is it detects the magnetic field of the steel wheel flange. There are two, because one counts out of the previous section and the next one counts into the next section. What drives the signalling? This is the SSI cabinet downstairs when we only had 3 SSI areas. This connects to the installations on the ground that control the signals and points. What drives the workstation? Well, this cabinet controls the 2 workstations and connects to the SSI to pass commands and receive feedback on operations for display on the workstation. I've been on duty once when the link between the two failed, that is, between the workstation and the SSI, and it was not what could be called fun by any description. When the line is running normally, the line is signalled automatically where the movement of the train set routes and make the head code changes. It isn't a very sophisticated system and works using an ordinary text file, albeit one with in excess of 20,000 lines. The pink handles on the screen turn this functionality on and off, and it tends to work at its best when trains are on or almost on time. Early trains are made to wait, and as the system has no decision-making capacity, trains are routed on a first-come, first-served basis, unless we are requested otherwise. You may also wonder why it requires 2 people to handle this. Well, the simplest answer is that when things do go wrong, they tend to go wrong in a big way. One person can't handle everything, and as an example, for a 2-hour incident, we may receive in excess of 140 phone calls from various sources. One person couldn't possibly deal with all the calls, the incident, and trying to run some sort of train service as well. With a final view of the workstation, we are going to leave the signal box, and I'm going to show you around the depot, first at night and then during the day. The main pedestrian access to New Cross Gate is via this foot crossing. It passes under the Up East London line and is directly over Coldblow Lane below. We'll just check nothing is coming. The line speed here is only 5 miles per hour. I'm now walking alongside 378257, which was the last 378 unit to be built. This is stabled in berth siding 5 North. Ahead is berth siding 6 North, which had the reminders on the workstation, and on the right are the tanks containing the anti-icing fluid used by certain units in the winter. The buildings on the right are the wheel lathe and heavy cleaning shed, with one of the resident foxes. Both yards are very busy at night. Units are cleaned and tested for minor defects. Usually there is only 4 hours to clean and prepare the 20 plus units that are required to go back into service between 5 a.m. and 6:08 a.m. An additional 5 units are berthed elsewhere. Looking around, there is a gap in the through sidings between units, as each siding used to contain 3 4-car units. Now they contain 2 5-car units, which leaves a bit of a gap. The unit displaying the white lights is being prepared or prepped for service. I have now reached the south end of the yard, showing a couple of exit signals. The ones with the red and white check signs on will be marked no HS on the concentrator. The one with the diagonal black and white sign will also be red on the concentrator, which isn't surprising when you see the conductor rails on both sides of it. Looking down towards the depot head shunt, the three white lights are on a unit. You can appreciate that we do have train movements most of the time and are quite busy at night. As the yard is full, this unit must be going to the maintenance shed for some heavier work. The access line that we crossed earlier passes behind the wheel lathe and heavy clean and goes underneath the flyover. The heaviest used crossing is just around the corner from the previous shot under the flyover, and I showed you the record of movements earlier. It isn't so bad here at night. This is the Shard, which is above London Bridge Station, and turning to the right, Canary Wharf. Naturally, as the signal box windows face roughly east, there are certain compensations in the early hours of the morning at certain times of the year. Now we're going to pay a visit to some of the facilities in daylight, starting with the wheel lathe. The wheel lathe itself is where the pit ends and is below track level, as is the operating position. If you've ever wondered about the wheel shavings, they're collected in this skip, and this is one I fished out for a closer look. As there is no traction power in the wheel lathe, the units are moved by this, the mule. It weighs 11 tonnes and is a remote control battery electric unit. I'm now looking north out of berth siding 5 north, with a proper 3-aspect running signal, track points and a position line. This is really a poser signal, and the white lights flash when the route is set using this method of signalling. Signal Echo Lima 280 is fitted with a full-size TPWS stop grid. It has blue numbers on the panel, and the small grey boxes to the left are track circuit interfaces. In the distance you can see 2 yellow EAK units. These are the interfaces for axle counters and convert the analog signal from the head to a digital signal required by the evaluator. This does the actual counting. The large grey building in the rear is Canal Junction Substation, where the domestic electric supply is rectified for traction use, nominally at 750 volts. This is the northbound exit from sidings 1, 2 and 3. The large grey boxes you can see are traction power isolation switches. If I turn around, I'm looking along the wash road. This uses recycled water which is collected from the roofs of all the site buildings. It is also interesting as the trains drive themselves through at 3 miles per hour. That is what the digital display is for. The train speedometers are not accurate enough for the driver to drive them at that speed, so they have a wash mode. In reality, it's just a big car wash. Moving over to the maintenance shed, there are 4 lines here. Line A, or Alpha, is on the right and has a bogey drop. Bravo, Charlie and Delta have inspection platforms at 4 levels. We'll walk down and have a closer look. As the walkway barriers are lowered, I can't walk across, but this is Road A, or Alpha. It is long and strong enough to lift a complete Class 378 off the ground using synchronised lifts. Incidentally, the whiteboards are used to prevent the lights on a unit in the shed distracting drivers on the Up East London line when the shed doors are open. I'm now on the walking route to the other set of sidings, which are called Silwood sidings. This is Surrey Canal Road, which used to be the Grand Surrey Canal. This fell into disuse in the 1960s and was filled in here to make this road. The wide path on the right used to be the towpath, and it is still possible to see rope wear under certain bridges. As you can see, the gradient down here is fairly steep, but short of our steepest gradient of 1 in 29, which is between Whitechapel and Shoreditch. The line passing above is the southeastern main line from Charing Cross and Cannon Street, but the London and Greenwich viaduct is on the other side. The approaching service on our line is going to New Cross. The signal ahead is Echo Lima 266. This can show a number of aspects, red, yellow and green of course, and the position light can be displayed with a number from 1 to 10. The position light can also act as a poser signal. This is a close-up of the same signal after a train has passed. The aspects are LEDs and they're grouped in multiple rows of 3. Moving to the other side of the southeastern viaduct, this is the exit from Silwood sidings. And this is the London and Greenwich viaduct. There used to be a public footbridge attached to the viaduct here that crossed the East London line. This is signal Echo Lima 267. The position 1 route indicator is for New Cross, and the position 4 indicator is for the New Cross Gate reversible line. The indicator box can display WS for the Wash Road, one S for burst siding 1 south, one N for 1 north, all with a position light. And the position light can also be a poser signal for all routes. The sidings at Silwood and New Cross Gate are sometimes used during the day to regulate the service if it becomes necessary. Here 378229 exits Silwood sidings and heads for New Cross to take up a passenger service. Back on the other side of the viaduct, you can see the rear of 229 waiting for a path to New Cross on the single line. This means that an up train is imminent. A bit more modern line-side furniture. The large box with the solar panel is a flange lubricator pump. The location straight ahead is where London Transport Canal Junction signal box used to be. This was the later London Transport signal box that controlled this end of the line. If I zoom in, you can just about see the old London Transport lights for the signalman's walking route from Stamford Street. I'm now looking back towards the flyover on the Up East London line. The Up line originally ran behind the trees in the distance and descended to join the course of the lines that ran from Old Kent Road Junction. When the approaching Up service has passed, I'm going to show you a feature of the traction power system. I've already mentioned that the East London line runs at 750 volts, but south of here the voltage is normally 650 volts. The 378 units are split into two electrically when running on DC power, and where our line joins the southern area, there is an 80-metre gap in the conductor rail to cater for the voltage difference. Most of the point operating mechanisms outside are electric point motors. The crossovers in the tunnels are clamp locks, which are hydraulic because of the dampness. The other box with the heatsink on the side controls the point heater. You can see the heater on the blades. All outside points are fitted with heaters. Here are some more railway features on or about the East London line that may be of interest to you. And that is about that. I hope you've enjoyed the different material and you have found it interesting. Ah yes, before I go, poser signals. Well, what they do is allow you under certain failure conditions of signals, points, TPWS or axle counters to run without talking past signals at red, which takes time and is fraught with risks where points are involved. The system checks the interlocking for you, otherwise you would have to use the manual route lists, so it massively reduces risk. And that really is that. I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you for watching.